الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد وبه قال حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد قال حدثنا عبد العزيز ابن أبي حازم عن أبي حازم عن سهل بن سعد رضي الله عنه قال جاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بيت فاطمة فلم يجد عليا في البيت فقال أين ابن عمك؟ قالت كان بيني وبينه شيء فغاضبني فخرج فلم يقل عندي فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم للإنسان انظر أين هو؟ فجاء فقال يا رسول الله هو راقد في المسجد فجاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو مضطجع قد سقط رداؤه عن شقه وأصابه تراب فجعل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسحه عنه ويقول قم يا أبا تراب قم أبا تراب قم أبا تراب صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد عدد ما ذكره الذاكرون وصل على سيدنا مولانا محمد عدد ما غفل عن ذكره الغافلون اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد أفضل صلواتك بعدد معلوماتك. If you remember, we were learning about the etiquettes of masjid, the adab of masjid, things that you can do in the masjid and the things that you cannot do in the masjid. So this discussion is continuing on the previous discussion of sleeping in the masjid. Previously, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi informed us about a woman sleeping in the masjid. And from there we learned whether women are allowed to sleep in the masjid or not. Now Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi is talking about men sleeping in the masjid. And in general, sleeping in the masjid is allowed, especially for those who are in need. Those who have no home due to some financial problem or some other problem. And especially for those who are there with the intention of ibadah, making i'tikaf. So during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, masjid was a very important place in the community. And it was treated not only as a masjid, most importantly, it was a masjid and it was treated as a masjid. Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, they always remembered the status of the masjid, importance of the masjid, and etiquettes of the masjid. But more than that, it was treated as a community center, as an Islamic center in our terminology during that time for Sahaba. So they used to learn in the masjid, they used to sleep in the masjid, they used to hold halaqas in the masjid, they used to have gatherings in the masjid. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam even used to have his guests, the delegations that used to come to visit him, he would have them sleep in the masjid as well. And in many cases, they were non-Muslims. They were not even Muslims. So a masjid was treated as a hosting place for the guests and for delegations by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. So the hadith in this Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi that he had mentioned, it is narrated by Sahal bin Sa'd radiyallahu anhu. He said that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the home of Fatima radiyallahu anha. And he came to the home of Fatima looking for Ali radiyallahu anha, who was married to Fatima radiyallahu anha and he was her husband. So he came looking for Ali radiyallahu anha at the home of his daughter Fatima radiyallahu anha. When he came, he did not find Ali radiyallahu anha there. Ali radiyallahu anha was absent. So he said to his daughter Fatima radiyallahu anha, he said, Aina ibnu ammik? Where's your cousin? So Fatima radiyallahu anha said, Kana bayni wa baynahu shay'un faghadaban. There was some argument between me and him, and he became angry at me, he became upset, فخرج, and he left the house. فلم يقل عندي, and he did not even sleep here. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked someone who was nearby, he asked someone who was nearby, Undur ayna huwa? Go look, where is he? He can't be far. He must be somewhere inside of Medina to Munawwara. So he asked someone who was near Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, go and look for him, where is he? So this Sahabi, he went, obeying the order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went in search of Ali radiyallahu anhu. He found Ali radiyallahu anhu, so he came back reporting to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Ya Rasulullah, huwa raqidun fil masjid. O Prophet of Allah, he's sleeping in the masjid. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the masjid and he found Ali radiyallahu anhu, he was still asleep. وَهُوَ مُضْطَجِعٌ, he was lying and he was deep asleep. قَدْ سَقَطَ رِدَاؤُهُ عَنْ شِقِّهِ وَأَصَابَهُ تُرَابٌ. So when he was deep in his sleep, he probably changed side in his sleep and his shawl fell from his body and now he was on dust. So the dust had covered his back. فجعل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسحه عنه ويقول قم أبا تراب قم أبا تراب. So Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم sat down and he was dusting off his back and he was saying, get up Abu Turab, get up Abu Turab. Now Abu Turab was not the name of Ali radiyallahu anhu, but the literal meaning of Abu Turab is the father of dust. And the reason why Rasulullah was calling him Abu Turab, this was the first time that he called him Abu Turab. No one had ever called him Abu Turab. So the reason why Ali radiyallahu anhu was being called by Abu Turab by Rasulullah because he was covered in dust. So Rasulullah he gave him this new nickname, this kunya, that, oh Abu Turab, get up, rise. So the main lesson of this story is that Ali radiyallahu anhu was sleeping in the masjid. And he was not just taking a nap. He was deep sleep in the masjid. He was taking a full sleep in the masjid. That is the main lesson of this hadith. But there are many more lessons need to be learned from this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is also the genius of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. The hadith that he mentions do not only deliver one lesson, although that is what he intended from that hadith, but there are many more lessons hidden within that hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But first, I have a test for you. In this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to the house of his daughter Fatima radiyallahu anha and his son-in-law Ali radiyallahu anhu, he asked for Ali radiyallahu anhu. And Ali radiyallahu anhu was not there. He did not find him there. So he asked his daughter Fatima radiyallahu anha, he said, Aina ibnu ammik? Where is your cousin? So the question that I have, which is a test for you, is Ali radiyallahu anhu a cousin of Fatima radiallahu anha? He was cousin? Huh? Okay, so he was the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but was he cousin of Fatima radiallahu anha? No. The answer is no. So why did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ask her by saying, "Where is your cousin?" Ibn Am means the son of your uncle. So we know that Ali radiallahu anhu was not the son of Fatima radiallahu anhu's uncle. He was the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's uncle. So he was the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not Fatima radiallahu anha. So why did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam address her in that manner? And at outside, it appears to be a wrong address. This is not how she should have been addressed. So in our culture, I'm not sure in other cultures how it is conceived or how is it perceived. But in our culture, dad's cousin is considered an uncle. Whether immediate cousin of dad or a distant cousin of dad, he is considered an uncle, right? A cousin of dad is considered an uncle in our culture. But in the Arab culture, it was different. First of all, the age mattered. And secondly, it was a common practice in the Arab culture to address someone by saying, "Oh, the daughter of your cousin," or "the son of your cousin," or things like that. Even if they were not directly related in this manner. Now we do know that Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu, they were related even before they were married. So there's one bond and one relationship that they had, which was the relationship of marriage. But there was a relationship that they had which was even before their relationship of marriage, and that was the blood relationship that they had. So Ali radiallahu anhu was the immediate cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and thereby he was a relative, an immediate relative to Fatima radiallahu anha as well. And this relationship was unbreakable. You know, the relationship of marriage can be broken. One day, two people are married. The next day, something happens and the husband divorces his wife, or the wife seeks divorce and they are separated. So that relationship is gone. But this relationship that is established by blood, by kinship, that relationship is unbreakable. That can never be severed, and that can never be broken. So, a lesson in this form of address of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha at this particular occasion. At other times he did not address her like that. But at this particular time he addressed her in this manner to remind her that Ali radiallahu anhu is not only your husband, he's also your blood relative. So he reminded her indirectly, and she was smart enough to understand. He reminded her indirectly that your relationship with Ali is not only the relationship of marriage, but there is an even stronger relationship, and that is the relationship of blood that you have with him. So, be mindful of that. remember that relationship which can never be severed and which can never be broken. So let's come to other lessons that are hidden in this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in this important incident. It is normal for husband and wife to get into arguments and get into fights, get into problems. And Sahaba radiallahu anhum were not immune to it either. Okay? And here, Ali radiallahu anh, who's not only a close relative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but a dear companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and someone who was raised by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was like his own son. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised Ali radiallahu anh from the very beginning of his childhood, because his father Abu Talib did not have financial means to support all of his children. So one day, all the brothers, they sat together and they made a mashwara. They consulted each other and they said, let's help our brother Abu Talib. Let's ease some financial burden from him by taking care of the responsibility of some of his children. So the one who took care of Ali radiallahu anh was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ali radiallahu anh was not just a son-in-law and a cousin, but he was like his son. So Ali radiallahu anh was very dear to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha, the dearest of all women to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha. So both of them understood the relationship that they had. It was a sacred one. But still, the marital problems, they are unavoidable. Obviously, there's a way to flow with the problem and to solve the problem, but no one is immune to it. If someone thinks that marriage will never have any problem, he's wrong. Because he is defying the history, defying the nature. So here, both of them were from the same tribe. Both of them were from the same family. Both of them were raised in the same manner. Because the one who raised Ali radiallahu anh was the one who raised Fatima radiallahu anha. Or the one who raised Fatima radiallahu anha was the one who raised Ali radiallahu anha. But still, it is natural for a husband and wife to have these differences of opinion, and as a result of that difference of opinion, they may have arguments. So, this is natural that there are times in every marriage that the husband and wife are not on the same page. So what should a husband do when a fight occurs, or rather a dispute occurs? Should he pick up something and hit his wife with that? Or should he start shouting back at her? Should he start swearing at her? And what should the wife do? So, there is a guidance to such problems in this incident from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the life of his beloved daughter Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ali radiallahu anhu, he remained there as long as he could tolerate, and as long as he could bear the argument, he could withstand the argument. When it became too much for him, he simply left the house. And there was no Dunkin' Donuts at that time, or Starbucks at that time. So he went to the masjid. And in masjid, there was nothing that he could do. And he went to a masjid at a time when no one else was in the masjid. So he could not he could not vent out his feelings to some of his friends. So he simply went to sleep. Because when you go to sleep, you calm down. Your anger and your harsh feelings are vented out automatically. So he went to sleep and he went into a deep sleep. And when he woke up, he was all good. All of that anger was gone. All of that upsetness was gone. All of that bad feeling was gone. Because at the end of the day, he did not want to have any bad feeling between himself and his wife, Fatima radiallahu anha. So this is a very important lesson for every couple, every Muslim couple. And in this incident, there's guidance for Muslim couples. That when you have problems, and you will, this is how you should react, and this is how you should handle the problem. Don't aggravate the problem. Don't provoke it. Don't start challenging your wife so she can be even more she can be even more angered, and she can even upset you more. Because this is what normally people do. They try to become the winners in a family issue. In a family issue, there's no winner and loser. Even if you're a loser in that argument, you're still a winner if your marriage still stands there strong. But if you win the argument, you win the conversation, you win the fight, but your marriage is all broken into pieces, you're not a winner. Indeed, you're a loser. So this is what we learn from this incident of Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu. Next, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he found out that there is some problem between his daughter and his son-in-law, Ali radiallahu anhu, he tried to repair it. He tried to fix the problem. He did not become the one to take an action to take revenge from Ali radiallahu anhu, his son-in-law. This is normally what happens in our culture, in our families, that the family of the woman, they become very active when they hear that their daughter is not being treated right, or their daughter is not happy with her husband. So they start to become defensive, and they are ready to take revenge. They don't want to solve the problem. They start threatening the son-in-law and his family that, who are you? I'm not going to let you live in peace. If you don't let our daughter live in peace, you will never live in peace. So they start threatening, and they start worsening the problem. So here we learn a prophetic guidance from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When his daughter and his son-in-law are in a problem in their marriage, he went to fix it. He went to repair it. So he went to find Ali radiallahu anhu. And when he found Ali radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu was sleeping, and there was dust on his back. So he started cleaning the dust from his back, and he started saying very politely, very softly, "Qum aba turab, qum aba turab." And it was something, although Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Ali radiallahu anhu this new nickname, this new kunya, but Ali radiallahu anhu, he used to get very happy whenever anyone called him by this name after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If anyone called him by Ya Aba Turab, he would become very happy because it was a name given to him by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was a reminder for him of that incident. So Imam Ibn Hajar rahmatullahi alayhi has mentioned that when the father-in-law goes to talk to his son-in-law and he's angry, he should try to soothe him by saying things that would comfort him, not by saying things that would aggravate him and that would anger him even more. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calming him down, but he had already left that state of anger and that state of rage. He was already calm and relaxed. So that's another lesson that we learn from this incident from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But most importantly, in this chapter, the main reason why Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi mentioned this hadith here in particular is because to prove the point that Ali radiallahu anhu was sleeping in the masjid. Now the word that has been used by Fatima radiallahu anha, she said, فَخَرَجَ فَلَمْ يَقِلْ عِنْدِي. The word qil comes from qaylula. So there are two different words in Arabic for sleep. One is qaylula and other one is nawm. Qaylula is used for a midday nap or afternoon nap. So basically, Ali radiallahu anhu went into the masjid sometime in the afternoon or sometime after Salatul Zuhr, and he was taking a nap over there in the masjid. And the word nawm refers to a full sleep, which is normally taken at night time or for some people during the daytime. So Fatima radiallahu anha, she said, فَخَرَجَ فَلَمْ يَقِلْ عِنْدِي, because he was angry, he was mad, he left the house and he did not even come to sleep after that. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam immediately learned of this problem and he went to fix the problem. He went to repair the relationship between his son-in-law and his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha. Next is the hadith that Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قدم من سفر بدأ بالمسجد فصلى فيه. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he used to return from a journey, he used to come to the masjid first, offer 2 rak'ah, and then go to his house. So this is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is mustahab, it is desirable for anyone who's returning from a journey that he should go to the masjid of his district or his neighborhood first, offer 2 rak'ah of nafil, and then go home. Now, in the case of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in the case of Sahaba, you should know that their homes were very close to the masjid. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's homes were actually adjacent to the masjid, but even the Sahaba, they were not living more than a few feet away from the masjid. The most anyone would be living away from the masjid would be a few hundred feet away. So they would live very close to the masjid, and it was very convenient for them to come to the masjid first and then go to their house. For people like us who live at distance of miles from the masjid, often it is not easy when we are returning from a long trip, from a long journey, to come to the masjid first and then go home. Therefore, that desirability is reduced even further. Nonetheless, if someone does come to the masjid first with the intention of following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gets enormous reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when he would return from a journey, he would come to the masjid first, he would offer 2 rak'ah of nafil, and then he would go to his house. The next is about building of masjid, building a masjid, and the physical building of the masjid. قال أبو سعيد كان سقف المسجد من جريد النخل. Abu Sa'id Al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, he says that the roof of the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was made from the branches of palm trees, date trees. وأمر عمر ببناء المسجد وقال أكن الناس من المطر وإياك تحمر أو تصفر فتفتن الناس. During the time of Umar radiyallahu anh, he ordered that the masjid should be built, mean renovated and expanded. At the same time, he said that I want to protect people from rain. So during the time of Umar radiyallahu anh, because the roof of the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was built in his time was not strong enough and was not waterproof completely. So whenever rain would come down, the roof of the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would start leaking and the water would start falling onto the floor of the masjid. So during the time of Umar radiyallahu anh, he wanted to renovate the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he wanted to expand it because more people were entering into Islam, more people were coming to move into the city of Medina, and more attendees were growing to the masjid for regular prayers. So masjid needed to be expanded. So Umar radiyallahu anh ordered for an expansion and a renovation of the masjid, and he paid particular attention to the roof of the masjid. He said, I want to make sure that the people will be protected from the rain, so the roof doesn't leak and thereby people don't get wet when the roof starts leaking. So Umar radiyallahu anh, he made an expansion and a renovation of the masjid, and he solidified the roof of the masjid. He made sure that the roof becomes waterproof. At the same time, to the builders, his instruction was, وَإِيَّاكَ تُحَمِّرْ أَوْ تُصَفِّرْ فَتَفْتِنَ النَّاسِ. Don't put red color in the masjid or lavish yellow color in the masjid, because it will distract people. So Umar radiyallahu anhu's opinion was that don't put such bright colors in the masjid when you're painting the interior of the masjid. That will cause distraction to the people who are performing salah in the masjid. Because if people start looking towards the color, they will start focusing on the decoration of the masjid and they will lose focus in salah. So the most important thing is the focus in salah. And if they are losing their focus in salah by something, then that something should not be there. Then Anas radiyallahu anhu said, يَتَبَاهَوْنَ بِهَا ثُمَّ لَا يَعْمُرُونَهَا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He said that people, when the masjid becomes too beautiful and too decorated, then people start boasting about their masajid, about their respective masajid, but very few come to actually attend the services in the masjid, attend the prayers, attend the halaqah, attend the dhikr and other activities in the masjid. And this is exactly what has happened in our time, and even at that time it was starting to happen that masajid, as they were starting to become more beautiful, more decorated, so less people were coming to the masjid. This was also a prediction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a time will come, people will make their masajid so beautiful, but inside of those masajid, there will be very few people actually doing the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I went to visit Turkey last year, there are thousands of masajid in Istanbul alone, one city. There are thousands of masajid. On every street, you will find 2 or 3 masajid. And masajid are beautiful. One of the nicest architectures of masajid are found in Turkey. But when you go inside of a masjid for any salah, you will find at most maybe 10% or even less people performing salah. Although these masajid are there and more than 90% of people living close to the masjid are all Muslims. But people don't really care about the salah, and more importantly about their salah being offered in the masjid with jama'ah. So that is a very sad part. So this is what Anas radiallahu anh said at that time, 1400 years ago. He said people, when they start decorating their masajid and start beautifying their masajid, then more attention is paid towards the decoration of the masjid, and less people are actually there to do the actual thing, fulfill the purpose of the masjid. The purpose of the masjid is ibadah, and that is not happening. وقال ابن عباس لتزخرفنها كما زخرفت اليهود والنصارى. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that this is a statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you will decorate your masajid as the Jews and Christians decorated their places of worship. Next is the hadith narrated by Nafi'. He said Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu told him that the masjid during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was made from bricks. So the walls were made of bricks. وَسَقْفُهُ الْجَرِيدُ, and the roof was made from the branches of date trees. وَعُمُدُهُ خَشَبُ النَّخْلِ, and the pillars in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were from the trunks of date trees. فَلَمْ يَزِدْ فِيهِ أَبُو بَكْرٍ شَيْئًا. Now during the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was an initial construction when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came into Medina. Then a few years later, there was a renovation that took place. So during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the masjid was only 60 by 60. So it was 60 feet wide and 60 feet long. This is how big the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. And then when Abu Bakr radiallahu anh became Khalifa, he did not expand the masjid. He did not add anything into the masjid. The masjid remained in the same way as it was during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then وزاد فيه عمر وبناه على بنيانه في عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم باللبن والجريد. So Umar radiallahu anh, when he became Khalifa, he realized that there is a need for expansion. So he expanded the masjid. So he made it 100 feet wide and 100 feet long. So he made more room, he created more room into the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he used the material that he used in this renovation was bricks and the branches of date trees. وَأَعَادَ عُمُدَهُ خَشَبًا, and he replaced those same pillars with new pillars also from the trunks of date trees, because they are very strong. ثُمَّ غَيَّرَهُ عُثْمَانَ فَزَادَ فِيهِ زِيَادَةً كَثِيرًا. Then during the time of Uthman radiallahu anh, he did the massive expansion of the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it is worth noting that Uthman radiallahu anh, when he took on the expansion of the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every penny that was put into construction was from his own pocket. He put his own money into building of this masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he made a massive expansion. وَبَنَا جِدَارَهُ, and he put walls, tall walls, بِالْحِجَارَةِ الْمَنْقُوشَةِ, with decorated stones, وَالْقَصَّةِ, and also with the limestone. وَجَعَلَ عُمُدَهُ مِنْ حِجَارَةٍ مَنْقُوشَةٍ. Also he replaced the old pillars with new pillars that were also decorated stones. وَسَقَفَهُ بِالسَّاجِ, and he put new roof with a special stone that was imported from another place. So all of this was done from the personal expense of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anh. He did not do any fundraisers. He did not ask anyone to pitch in some money. He did everything from his own pocket. The personal money that he had, he invested all of that into the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was making that massive expansion of the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some Sahaba, they they raised objection to that, especially when he was doing some decorations of the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So some Sahaba raised some objections to this practice by saying that this is not the way Rasulullah ﷺ approved the Masjid to be built. So Uthman radiallahu anh, he provided his justification, and he said that Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Man bana lillahi masjida, banallahu lahu baytahu mithlahu fil jannah." Aw kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That whoever builds a house for Allah, a masjid in this world, Allah will build a similar house for him in the paradise. So the word similar was important to Uthman radiallahu anh. So he said, I want my house in Jannah to be a beautiful mansion, a beautiful place. So I want to spend everything that I can, to the best of my ability, on this masjid that I'm building for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, Ibn al-Munayyir rahmatullahi alayhi, one of the commentators of Sahih Al-Bukhari, he said that when people start building their houses with decoration, and they start decorating their houses, and they start constructing beautiful houses, then the masajid should also be decorated and beautiful in order to protect the sanctity of the masjid. So people don't start looking down at the masjid and saying, oh, this masjid doesn't even have carpet, this masjid doesn't even have windows, this masjid doesn't even have air conditioning, this masjid doesn't even have lights, this masjid doesn't even have that. So people start looking down at the masjid. So in order to raise the sanctity and sacredness of the masjid, this is appropriate to have some sort of dignity and decoration in the masjid, so it stands out as the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Any questions? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد افضل صلواتك بعدد معلوماتك. اللهم انا نسالك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم انا نسالك العفو والعافيه والمعافاه الدائمه في الدين والدنيا والاخره. اللهم حبب الينا الايمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره الينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن يميننا وعن شمالنا ومن فوقنا وأن نغتال من تحتنا. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا ونبيا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. جزاكم. The dinner is ready, alhamdulillah. I like to remind you from time to time that this dinner is wholly supported by your donations, and we have a separate box for that. This fund doesn't come from the masjid, so any donation that goes towards this dinner is wholly spent for the purpose of dinner. And for past few weeks we've been running low on this fund. We actually owe some money to the restaurant, so we urge you inshallah to make some donation to that fund only to support, to continue this dinner inshallah, providing this dinner. And it's not very difficult. Even if we donate $5 or $10 every week, it will still sustain this dinner inshallah, because the cost of this dinner is about $200, and if we can only maybe donate $5 or $10 every week, that will sustain this dinner inshallah. Jazakumullah.